Have you ever wondered why you can know exactly what needs to be done, yet find yourself completely incapable of doing it when the moment arrives? This gap between understanding and action, between theory and practice, intention and reality, forms the heart of what Christ taught in the parable of the 10 virgins. According to Gurdjieff's Esoteric Christianity, this parable doesn't primarily concern being religiously prepared. It describes something far more significant about the conditions required for consciousness to function when circumstances demand it. In this parable, all 10 virgins knew the bridegroom was coming. All 10 intended to meet him. All 10 carried lamps. Yet, when the critical moment arrived, only half possessed what was actually necessary. The parable states that while waiting for the bridegroom, all 10 virgins fell asleep. Traditional interpretations often skip past this detail or treat it as insignificant background. Gurdjieff would insist we stop here because this sleep reveals the fundamental human condition. Humanity lives in a state Gurdjieff called the waking sleep. This isn't physical unconsciousness. People walk, talk, work, make plans, and believe themselves fully conscious while actually dwelling in a kind of hypnotic trance. In the parable, Christ makes it clear that both groups slept. The wise virgins were not more morally alert or spiritually vigilant in any conventional sense. They slept just as deeply as the foolish. This detail destroys comfortable interpretations, suggesting that good people stay awake while bad people doze off. Everyone sleeps. Religious training doesn't prevent it. Spiritual knowledge doesn't cure it. "Give us some of your oil," the foolish virgins beg the wise. The response is stark. "No, there may not be enough for both us and you." This refusal seems harsh to ears trained in sharing and compassion. Gurdjieff would say such emotional reactions to the parable's content prevent understanding its actual teaching. The wise virgins aren't being selfish or cruel. They're stating a fact about psychological reality. Oil in this parable represents what Gurdjieff called higher hydrogens, refined substances that can only accumulate in the human organism through years of specific inner work. These substances are produced when impressions, air, and food undergo conscious transformation rather than mechanical processing. Most humans waste everything they consume, maintaining basic biological functions, producing nothing that could be stored for purposes beyond survival. The refined substances consciousness requires cannot be transferred from one person to another. You cannot borrow being. You cannot purchase years of work from someone who has done that work. Each individual must accumulate these materials through their own sustained effort, their own conscious suffering, their own intentional labor. The foolish virgins never brought oil because they fundamentally misunderstood what the wedding required. They brought lamps, which represent having the right ideas, knowing the appropriate terminology, and possessing intellectual understanding of what consciousness means. Yet lamps without oil produce no light. Knowledge without corresponding development of being remains theoretical and useless when practical demonstration becomes necessary. The wise virgins brought oil in vessels separate from their lamps. This detail matters tremendously in esoteric interpretation. The lamp holds only what is immediately burning, consumed in the present moment. The vessel contains a reserve supply, materials accumulated during all the time before this critical moment. According to Gurdjieff's teaching about the human organism as a 3-storied factory, documented throughout In Search of the Miraculous, most people operate with such inefficiency that nothing gets stored. Energy entering through food, air, and impressions is immediately consumed by mechanical thinking, negative emotions, unnecessary tension, and habitual worry. At day's end, nothing remains. The person has lived but produced nothing beyond waste products and fatigue. The wise virgins represent individuals who learn to interrupt this waste. Through self-observation, they began noticing where energy leaked away unnecessarily. Through conscious effort sustained over years, they accumulated substances that could be stored in their vessels rather than immediately consumed by automatic functioning. This work proceeds invisibly. Outwardly, the wise and foolish virgins appeared identical while waiting for the bridegroom. Both attended the same gatherings. Both heard the same teachings. Both called themselves prepared. The difference existed entirely in what had been built internally through sustained practice that nobody else could observe or verify. Gurdjieff emphasized repeatedly that genuine work produces no immediate gratification, no obvious results, no external validation. Someone might observe themselves daily for months while friends and family notice no change. The materials being accumulated operate at levels beyond what ordinary perception can detect. Only when testing arrives does the difference between those who actually worked and those who merely talked become visible. When the midnight cry announces the bridegroom's approach, what had been theoretical suddenly becomes urgent and practical. The moment tests what is actual rather than what was imagined or intended. The wise virgins trim their lamps and light them from their reserve supply. The foolish discover their lamps won't maintain flame because they possess no sustaining substance. They try to purchase what they lack, yet certain things cannot be bought at the last minute. Development of awareness requires time measured in years. A crisis doesn't create capacity that long preparation failed to build. Christ makes the bridegroom's identity clear through context. This parable follows the Olivet Discourse about his return, about the end of the age, about the coming of the Son of Man. In Gurdjieff's esoteric reading, documented in his statement that his teaching represents the inner meaning of Christianity, the bridegroom symbolizes higher consciousness attempting to manifest within the individual. Ordinary consciousness cannot recognize or receive this higher state because it operates at an incompatible level. Only consciousness that has been specifically prepared through the accumulation of refined substances can make contact with what arrives from above. The foolish virgins miss the wedding because they literally cannot perceive what is occurring. Their level of being remains too low to register the bridegroom's presence. The door shuts and cannot be reopened. This finality reflects a cosmic law Gurdjieff identified repeatedly. Certain opportunities exist only within specific windows of time. The conditions that make transformation possible pass, and while passing, they take away the possibilities that cannot be recovered simply by wanting them later. The person unprepared when opportunity arrives remains unprepared after opportunity has gone. The bridegroom says to the foolish virgins, "I do not know you." This statement connects directly to what Christ taught earlier in Matthew's Gospel. Not everyone who says to me, "Lord, Lord," will enter the kingdom of heaven. Religious language, correct beliefs, and spiritual vocabulary provide zero access to actual transformation. Only the consciousness built through years of work can respond to what arrives from higher levels. The parable's foolish virgins exemplify knowledge divorced from being. They know the bridegroom is coming, know they should prepare, yet possess no actual capacity when knowledge must become practice. The impossibility of transfer reveals something essential about consciousness. It cannot be inherited, cannot be given as a gift, and cannot be manufactured quickly when an emergency arises. Each person either develops what is necessary through their own sustained work, or they remain mechanical, regardless of how sophisticated their understanding becomes. Parents cannot pass developed being to children. Teachers cannot install it in students. Groups cannot generate it through collective enthusiasm. Books cannot transmit it through inspiring words. The work is non-transferable, non-negotiable, and unavoidable if transformation is the actual goal rather than a comfortable fantasy about eventual spiritual achievement. The wedding feast that the wise virgins enter while the foolish ones are excluded symbolizes the event when higher consciousness manifests. The wedding feast is the condition where consciousness has developed sufficiently to participate in levels of reality that remain invisible to mechanical awareness. This isn't metaphorical or symbolic in some vague spiritual sense. Gurdjieff taught that higher states involve actual perception of different laws, different energies, and different dimensions of existence that cannot be accessed from an ordinary psychological condition. Missing the wedding means missing the possibility of transformation, continuing to live and die as a biological machine that never developed beyond what nature provided automatically. The foolish virgins don't simply miss a party, they miss the only opportunity for consciousness to develop beyond mechanical existence. Contemporary seekers typically approach spiritual development through reading, workshops, retreats, and following teachers who promise rapid transformation through comfortable methods. The parable of the 10 virgins exposes this approach as fundamentally inadequate. Accumulating knowledge about consciousness is not the same as developing consciousness. Attending events where transformation is discussed differs completely from doing the daily work that transformation requires. Believing in spiritual possibilities while failing to build capacity for experiencing those possibilities leaves a person exactly like the foolish virgins, carrying lamps that cannot produce light when light becomes necessary. Gurdjieff's system offers patient, unglamorous daily methods that actually accumulate the oil consciousness requires. These methods don't promise peak experiences or rapid enlightenment. They promise only that sustained effort over the years might begin producing results that cannot be achieved any other way. The parable holds the lesson that patient preparation determines everything when the moment of testing arrives. The parable warns that understanding this intellectually changes nothing. Only those who actually engage the work, who actually observe themselves daily, will possess what the critical moment demands. Everyone else will discover, perhaps too late, that their supposed preparation was fantasy. Their spiritual sophistication was costume, and their faith was imagination rather than reality.